It's 9 a.m. and it's already really warm, and it's nice in the shade. Though I do want to get some sun time in for sure. This morning I was again listening to the birds in this one particular spot that there's quite the symphony of birds and, oh, a lizard. He's looking right at the sun. And there was this one particular bird song, and I don't know the kinds of birds and what they sing, but it was just so detailed and beautiful. I could just sense that they were really talking to each other, because one would sing the song and then the other, and it was quite complex in terms of the notes and the tempo, and I could hear these little birds chirping like maybe the mom bird was singing to her babies so they could learn the song themselves, and how her singing the song would almost create the brain cells those little babies needed in order to sing the song when they grow up. Because I don't think they practice and then get the song wrong. I think they just sing it when they do sing it. So it must be in their brain somehow. But I almost started to tear up just because it was so beautiful. And then I could hear the bees buzzing. It sounded like a faint swarm all around me, but really it's just so silent that the space is there for the bee buzzing frequency. And even when I was hearing all the birds, I had this sense that all the birds are here together, so they need to have their own song and occupy their own frequency, not just even occupying their own space and time, in space and time, but having that frequency for their song. And in the same way, I feel like map consciousness is a different frequency for humans to start singing a different song, giving voice to something different. I just love the sound of the hummingbirds. They sound like little machines, like, I don't know if you can hear that. It just sounds like a little squeaky mechanical part, but it's this tiny little bird sitting there looking for his friends. And I took a video of the bees buzzing, and I've taken a couple other clips of things, and maybe I'll share some of them throughout, because part of it is learning to speak the language of beauty in nature. And I feel like we could speak a language of beauty just among human beings, but maybe it's easier to learn that language around nature. And I just had this insight that consciousness holds us up in gravity. So at nighttime we go to sleep, and it's like our consciousness has set, just like the sun sets. It's still there, it's just sort of set beyond the horizon. So when our consciousness sets, it's this inner darkness where we're not really conscious, and we go to sleep and we're no longer holding ourselves up in gravity. So consciousness in a way is anti-gravity. And gravity has an effect on matter, but I'm not sure if it has an effect on light. So in this conversion of matter into light through perception, perhaps gravity has less of an effect. And the other thing with the bees is I heard this loud bee buzzing. And I'm going to let the crow have his time on the video, and I will occupy my own space and let him crow in between, because that's fine. But the bee, it was such a loud bee, and I looked over and it was a big bumblebee, and It was like 30 feet away. Yet I could hear this thing like it was right beside me. And again, that's the silence. And I feel like the same thing can happen with silence and consciousness. Then one can sense things a lot more strongly, even if they're far away. Different energies and vibrations and perceptions. What do you want? And I realized last night that now might be a good time to go through my old original manic notes for some of my strange ideas, since my friend and I are going to be playing with strange ideas. Not all of them strange, but just playing with ideas together in this manic creative way and see what happens. It's sort of like what happens when two people that have been labeled with stuff put their brains together in knowing that their brains have something that they want to unfold and create, not knowing exactly what that is, and seeing what happens. So I have been unfolding and creating this self-dialogue with myself. And now what do I create with somebody else, which is something beyond just talking to myself about reframes, about map consciousness and trans consciousness. That has a certain value, but then understand map consciousness and trans consciousness for what? It's one thing to create the context. It's the next thing to be embodied as creating with an understanding of that context. Hey! That was funny. I went, hey, and the bird was like, caw, caw, caw. Let's see. Hey! 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 Shh! That's enough. I'm trying to make a video here. Why doesn't this bird understand that I'm trying to make a video? I'm trying to talk to myself. I listened to the birds all morning, and I'm done listening to the birds. He said, yeah, no, I don't care. Why don't you make like a bunny and be quiet, bird? It seems like he's applying the principle of if you're lost, if you've lost your mom, stay put, don't move, she will find you. Do not go with anyone else. So he's just sitting there calling out. He's lost the radius of awareness, because I've noticed that so many of these birds, they call to each other back and forth, and the bird closest to me calls out, and then I can hear a bird far, far away calling out, and they seem to stay within earshot of each other. Who knows if their hearing is more or less sensitive, but it's a hummingbird. Yeah, I don't know if this bird is going to give me my own silent external space. I remember now talking about finding dialogue partners as a kind of dating in a way. Wanting to share that space and time, but not necessarily physical space. And it seems like I found a co-creative brain. And we'll be supporting each other in our co-creation, not just trying to help each other with symptoms and things. So in that way, we're acknowledging the original process and how the brain enters a creative hyper-learning state, and going with that as opposed to trying to fix our symptoms. Yet we both have this understanding that our brains might possibly go into hyperspeed, but we'll be able to support each other in that. Again, it's about just create. It's the process. It's not about what. It's not about a goal. It's not about a particular thing, because that narrows it down. Part of it will possibly be showing the process of getting into a supported creative process. And it could be like being parallel quantum processors. In a way, we might need to gather more brains, but I'm not sure. The other brains would really have to get it, because we were talking to each other about how we've known each other for a 1.5 years, and we've been having long conversations here and there throughout. So because of that, we have an established trust and understand that we share the same values. I even said to him that I wouldn't even care if he took all my ideas. They're not even my ideas. And then if he just took them all and stopped talking to me, I would only care that he stopped talking to me, but not about the ideas, because in this process, there's an understanding that ideas are unlimited and we can't carry them all out on our own, nor do we want to. There's ones we don't want to even do, but maybe somebody else does. So I talked about this before, how in business, a person will get one idea and they'll work 20 years on it. Whereas people with these types of brains that go into the creative state get 1,000 ideas in a day, yet can't do anything with them. So there's this idea about the scarcity of ideas. And in a way, ideas might be a new currency, an exchange, and then people that carry them out can do so, the ones that want to. So we sort of unfolded something, but who knows what will happen with it. And that'll be just part of this self-dialogue, but self-dialoguing about co-creation, possibly. And even in my self-dialogues, I've talked about things that I want to create. So it's possible that that will be made more possible throughout this co-creative process. I can sort of see that it's a process of making things possible. And I had an insight. I've been saying that our own voice gets turned against ourself. But then I also realized that our own voice is ourself. It creates the ego self and the me. It's just our own voice repeating in our head. And when we see that that's not anything at all, then it loses its strength. And I mentioned that map consciousness is a deprogramming language. And I talked before about how it seems like this whole process where the brain can have altered states of consciousness is a fail-safe, so the brain, which is a living thing, can't get programmed into machine-like action. And we already have, but it ensures that we can't ultimately get programmed into machine-like action. And the deprogramming language is life itself. So thoughts are mechanical machinery that get us to act based on programs, and life itself is the deprogramming language, the energy of life and living and chaos and complexity and change and flux and flow. And also actually just seeing nature and understanding the language of nature will deprogram us from being so identified with this me self that we think is so important. So life itself cannot be written over by words. And words are constructs and things we use to judge and categorize things, but life is not actually according to human categories. those categories can be somewhat useful and beneficial, but they can also be very destructive. Yet words, which are very limited, and categories and human abstractions and concepts cannot write over life. Life created those words. So life would not have within itself the allowance for words, which is a very small subset of life, to destroy life. So life allowed words and language to evolve, but now it seems like that has been used to too much detriment. And so we're having people born not able to acquire language or something like that. Words can be used to point out life's artful relatedness, or it can be used for division. And we each have an inner dictator. It's dictating with words what we should see and categorize and judge, and those are all programs we're moving according to. And there are no dictators, it's just thought. Yeah, so I saw that very clearly last night when I was getting ready to go to sleep, and that one almost freaked me out when I see those things that are, they can be warped in a kind of scary way. Because I feel like in so-called psychosis, it's thought, it's all of that energy, and it nearly destroys a single person. But if one is able to see through that and get through it, maybe one day one can just brush those words off one's sleeve and understand that those words cannot destroy the life that one is. So even if those words are going on in the mind and consciousness, trying to get the organism to destroy itself, if one just lays there and surrenders, it can't do that. Words cannot destroy life. And so in learning this language of relatedness and insight, when one sees that relatedness and that we are nature, one doesn't destroy nature, and then nature starts to respond to us again. Huh. It's a hummingbird. I don't know if you saw that. That was so cool. I've never seen one in the middle of the air like that. So hopefully you saw that. Apparently in a couple of weeks there'll be a lot of hummingbirds here, and I'll try and get some video. I feel like seeing hummingbirds heals the brain. Such a miraculous being. And the other day I heard a siren for the first time, and it was actually because I was outside walking and I was listening to some of my video audios. I've only listened to a couple. And I heard a siren from the video audio, and I was like, whoa, I haven't heard an ambulance or a fire truck in 3 weeks. And I was thinking about how getting used to cold water turns off the shivering response, and how getting used to manic consciousness, or even just a flux and flow in consciousness, turns off the behaviors that we need to prune out response. So just like if one first jumps in a freezing cold pool of water, they're going to jump out in a big reaction. So when one gets used to this flux and flow of consciousness, this sensitivity, and one starts to understand what one is sensitive to, then one doesn't have such a on-off reaction, like move towards or run away. One can start to be with it and understand the richness of that, and understand that staying with it will give an unfolding, flowering of information. because we're so used to with our ego judgments. Good, bad, right, wrong, yes, no, desire, pain. It's just so on or off. So when we first get in touch with this richness that isn't about on or off, yes or no, we still have that response. And so we can have so-called behavior problems when it's not that. It's just we're learning how to be with that richness, with the old pattern behaviors that we're used to of fight or flight or good or bad or, oh yes, this suits my little fancy that I've been programmed to be attuned to or not.